Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar entitled Unlocking the Potential of High Throughput Ligand-Gated Electrophysiology. I'm Anson, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. We're delighted to have with us for what promises to be a very informative and engaging discussion. To begin, I'd like to take a moment to introduce Mr. Andrew Cook, a Senior Study Director at Eurofins Discovery. Andy, who is based at the Ion Channel Center of Excellence in St. Charles, Missouri, has been with Eurofins for 17 years and has been in ion channel drug discovery for over 20 years. Before I hand it over to Andy, a few quick reminders. This webinar presentation will last approximately 45 minutes, followed by a question and answer session. We encourage you to submit your questions at any time using the Q&A feature, and we'll address as many as we can during the Q&A session. Also, this session is being recorded for future access. We will follow up with a link to the webinar recording for all registrants. And without any further delay, I will let Andy take it away.
Thank you, Anson. Thank you, Cell Microsystems and Foxion for letting us present here today. We appreciate it. Hopefully we can show you how we use our ion fluxes to accelerate our drug discovery programs. So at Eurofins Discovery, we believe that your novel molecule can change the world. So as Anson said, I'll be focusing purely on ligand-gated ion channels today and unlocking the potential of high throughput ligand-gated electrophysiology. So just a quick overview of Eurofins Discovery Ion Channel Services. So the Ion Channel Center of Excellence at Eurofins Discovery is based in St. Charles, Missouri. We have our own catalog of over 60 ion channels, which are termed precision ion cell lines expressing voltage and ligand-gated ion channels. We have the capability to screen from 1 to tens or hundreds of thousands of compounds. We offer the CIPA-relevant cardiac safety panels, core and full. We can perform human iPSC-derived cardiomyocyte functional assessments. We offer a full sodium panel, NAV11 through 18. And what we'll be focusing on today is ligand-gated selectivity panels, including but not limited to GABAA and nicotinic targets. And for any of our assays, we can couple those with solubility measurements. As Eurofins Discovery as a whole, we offer a fully integrated drug discovery service with chemistry libraries, custom synthesis capabilities. We are also co-located with ADME-Tox, in vivo, oncology, biotherapeutics, biomarkers, and translational biology. So I guess the best question is, why ligand-gated ion channels? So ligand-gated ion channels are found throughout the body with a broad range of functions. The 5 here that we'll be focused on today. So GABAA regulate neuronal firing in the CNS, nicotinic acetylcholine receptors or NACHR receptors mediate fast neurotransmission in the CNS and PNS. Serotonin receptor, the one we'll be focused on, is 5-HT3, is responsible for neuronal depolarization. ASIC channels, we'll be looking at ASIC3 here, are proton sensors in the PNS and CNS. Obviously ASIC3 is just in the PNS, so that's what we focused on there. And glycine receptors, we'll be looking at GlyRA1. They mediate inhibitory neurotransmission. So ligand-gated ion channel assays are pretty ubiquitous throughout the whole CNS and PNS. And there is a huge number of potential drug targets for compounds that modulate agonist, antagonist, or PAM effects on ligand-gated ion channels, including anesthetics, which typically the associated channels there are GABAA, GluR, and AMPA. Muscle relaxants, nicotinic, GluR. Antipsychotics, once again, nicotinics, GABA, and GluR. Anti-anxiety includes ASIC, GABAA, and TRP channels. Epilepsy include P2X, nicotinic, and GluR receptors. And seizure, once again, GABAA, nicotinic, 5-HT3, so that's serotonin receptor, and GluR. So the reason that we chose the ion flux, we've been using this for many years. The reason we use this for the vast majority of our ligand-gated assays is because historically, ligand-gated ion channel drug research has been hampered with a low throughput. So not really that long ago, manual patch was the main option, or the gold standard as it was classed. Is extremely low throughput with an optimistic throughput of 15 data points per day. And you require a highly skilled operator to perform manual patch clamp, which can be years of training, especially for the fast ligand-gated channels. There are fluorescence-based assays, which were the first development for ligand-gated high throughput. They are the highest throughput method up to this point, but they're not a direct ion channel current measurement. So they are also challenged by colored compounds, and there's a potential for false positives due to puncturing the membrane or the color interfering with the fluorescence. There are alternative automated patch clamp instrumentation that covers medium to high throughput. Part of the drawbacks there are that compounds are applied by either fixed or disposable tips with the resulting carryover, and there is a non-continuous flow of ligand and wash off. So the ion flux is perfectly suited for medium to high throughput ligand-gated drug discovery due to the rapid solution change, continuous flow and wash off, and the short assay time allows collection of thousands of data points per day per instrument. And I know Stephanie will be going into more information on that after this talk. So I'm not going into the technical aspect of the ion flux itself here. So at Eurofins Discovery, our ion flux offerings include GABAA. We have 7 subtypes of GABAA channel, and I should say for all of these, we offer them in multiple modes of standard, including agonist, antagonist, and PAM. We can also look at PAM antagonist, inverse agonist, etc. We offer nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, nicotinic alpha-1, which is the muscle type receptor, which I'll go into a case study on later. The ganglion type alpha-3 beta-4, the nicotinic alpha-4 type, which is the heteromeric CNS type found in the brain, and the homomeric CNS type, nicotinic alpha-7 RIC3 that is found in the brain. The serotonin receptor 5-HT3, glycine receptor GlyRA1, and the acid sensing ion channel ASIC3. So the good advantage of the ion flux is that you get true whole cell patch clamp and the traces that we all like to see for ligand-gated. So it is exactly as you would see on a manual patch clamp with just a huge increase in throughput. So we routinely offer screen all of our 7 GABA subtypes in agonist, antagonist, and PAM mode. And in-house, we keep a track of the mean IC50 or EC50 for each. So you can see here in the table at the bottom, we've got the agonist GABA IC50 with the lowest IC50 nicotinic, GABA alpha 5 at 0.7 micromolar up to 5.5 for the alpha 3. The antagonist, all of these targets respond to bicuculin. They're typically in the 1 to 2 or 0.5 to 2 micromolar range across the subtypes. And for looking at the PAM, or the positive allosteric modulation, 4 of the 6 subtypes, or 7 subtypes, with the exception of alpha 4 and alpha 6, respond to diazepam, and we typically get double-digit nanomolar diazepam responses. I haven't included the data here, but we do see good responses to allopregnanolone, which is effective at alpha 4 and alpha 6. So if we look to the top panels here, I've just put 3 sample traces from the GABA alpha 1 beta 3 gamma 2 cell line to demonstrate the type of traces that we see in a typical assay. So here we have applied so we have a baseline where there is no current. We have applied 6 concentrations of GABA in an ascending manner from 0.1 all the way up to 30 micromolar. So this is alpha 1 beta 3, and you can see there the IC50 is around the typical track 2.6 micromolar. For the antagonist, we co-apply with GABA, so we apply an EC80 baseline first. You can see that here it's showing around 11 nanoamps. With the, I apologize, that's a 4 micromolar. That's a mistaken slide. I apologize. This is 4 micromolar bicurculin, 20 micromolar bicurculin, and 100 micromolar bicurculin. So you see good inhibition over time with the 3 concentrations. And for the PAM assay, we apply a EC20 concentration of GABA. And then with increasing concentrations of diazepam, so 0.1, 0.3, and 1 micromolar diazepam, you see a significant increase in current, which is exactly as you would expect. So I think you'll agree the traces look very, very nice. There's not really any obvious artifacts, and it's as good as anything you would ever see from a manual rig, but the throughput is orders of magnitude greater. So moving on to the nicotinic channels, once again, I won't go into too much detail on this, but we've got our reference trackers at the bottom for the compounds. We use acetylcholine as the typical agonist. The antagonist compounds are different depending on channel, and 3 of the 4 targets have a commercially available PAM, and those data right here. So one of the most exciting targets to do and to show data on for the ion flux is the nicotinic alpha 7 RIP3, because it's a very rapidly activating and inactivating channel. And I know that some other platforms it's very difficult to detect the peak, but the rapid solution change on and off in the instrument gives you a very nice looking alpha 7 current. So here we've got a 0.3% DMSO, which is our typical baseline. And then we add on 1 millimolar acetylcholine, and you get 3.5 nanoamps of current in this cell. For the antagonist here, so the heteromeric CNS type alpha 4 beta 2 channel, we've put an EC80 acetylcholine baseline here, and then with increasing concentrations of the inhibitor DH beta E, you see inhibition over time. This is the lower concentrations. We do see full block. I just wanted to show an IC50 concentration and the fidelity there. So for the PAM, nicotinic alpha 4 beta 2 does have a known PAM. So here you can see we apply an EC20 concentration of acetylcholine and then add on 3 micromolar, which is actually a submaximal dose of LY20871101. Now we typically get ranges for this in about half micromolar, 580 nanomolar. So just a quick sample traces for additional channels here. So the 5-HT3, the serotonin receptor, here's a typical agonist dose response starting at 0.3% DMSO, going with increasing concentrations of serotonin from 0.03, 0.1, 0.3, 1 micromolar, 3, and 10 micromolar. So it's a relatively steep curve, but that's to be expected for the agonist here. Moving on to the GlyRA1, so the glycine receptor, here we see a very stable baseline, and that's pretty indicative of everything that we see on this instrument. You get a very stable baseline due to the slow or the rapid solution change and the constant flow throughout. So you don't get very many changes in current due to basal flow changes or bubbles. We very rarely see bubbles affecting this, for example, which would hamper manual and other instruments on occasion. So at 0.3% DMSO, we get a good baseline, and adding increasing concentrations of glycine from 0.3 all the way up to 100 micromolar. Once again, you see a nice looking concentration response, which is well within our tracked EC50 of 25 micromolar. So when I mentioned tracked EC50, these are over many years. We've been running all of these targets for a very long time. We have a lot of experience running all of the targets we're speaking about here. And we'll run them very routinely. So one that's a little bit more different. So the ligand here is pH, so the acid sensing channel A63. At a baseline of pH 7.4, we get pretty much no current. There is some noise in this trace, that is actually due to probably our electrical input in the building, that triggers every now and again. But once again, you add the pH 5.5, and you get a 4 nanoamp current, which is pretty rapid. And because we're washing off pretty quickly, so I should say that all of these compounds are applied for 2 seconds, and then we wash off. So that's shown here on the GLI-RA the most. You get the onset, the inactivation, and almost immediate wash off due to the background flow rate. So down the base here, we see 5-HT3. Our reference agonist is serotonin. GLI-RA is glycine. A63 is an acidic pH, so we don't track the EC50 of that. It's for the agonist and antagonist, we stick to an acidic pH as the opener. For the antagonist, we get a good data for palonositron for 5-HT3 down into the nanomolar. So that's another indication of how sensitive this instrument is in our hands. Likewise, with strychnine and amiloride, we get double-digit nanomolar potencies. Because these assays are relatively short, we see very minimal binding of anything to the plate. Because everything happens in the plate, there's no disposable tips, etc. The carryover and binding have been minimized. So just to go on to a specific example here of a case study of the muscle type nicotinic receptor, nicotinic alpha-1, beta-1, delta, epsilon. Here is data that was obtained over 2 days. So here, this is the agonist data. We applied an acetylcholine dose response over 2 separate days and got 7.1 and 6.9 micromolar for our typical opener. But then, likewise with succinylcholine, we maintained an PC50, I apologize, PC50 of 9.2 and 10.8 micromolar across 2 days. So it might be difficult to see, but there are actually 2 curves overlaying here exactly. So it really does point to the reproducibility that we see in our data from day to day, month to month, year to year. And on the right-hand side are the sample traces that have been exported and drawn in a graphing program. So here we have presented a 6 concentration acetylcholine curve, and once again, a succinylcholine curve below. So here, just to show how we can use toxins, which have historically hampered plate-based assays due to non-specific binding to the plastic. But here we tested waglarin and alpha-bungarotoxin, which are both toxin compounds, across 3 separate days to look at reproducibility day to day. I can actually say that these were actually not 3 consecutive days. These days were actually a week or 2 apart from day 1 to day 3. So we get a good consistency of around 0.3 micromolar for the waglarin and 0.1 micromolar for the alpha-bungarotoxin for the antagonist assay. And similar to the traces I shown earlier, our EC80 acetylcholine control here is kind of in the teal. And then we apply increasing concentrations in the green, purple, and yellow to see good inhibition across time. Then we looked at typical antagonist small molecules as opposed to just toxins here. So galamine, once again, these were done in the same schematic, day 1, day 2, day 3, which were not consecutive days. They were, I don't know, a week or 2 apart from 1 to 3. So for galamine here, we see a good range of IC50 from 4.8 to 7.4 micromolar across the 3 days. And for pancuronium, a very low potency value of 60 nanomolar to 130 nanomolar across day to day. Once again, the teal, green, purple, and yellow. Hopefully, you see those in your screen. I know every screen is different, but this is the top concentration, or low, medium, high concentration here. These are all co-applied with acetylcholine PC80. So we pre-incubate and co-apply typically in all of our assays to make sure that our data is as reproducible as possible. So yeah, that was a quick overview. Obviously, I couldn't present all of our data. There's a lot of data out there, and I'd be happy to converse with anyone that wants to contact me directly and set up a conversation. I would like to acknowledge the Ion Channel Group in St. Charles, Missouri. These are our two buildings here in the Midwest. So there is Mr. Christian Rangi Ranganathan, Jennifer, Darcy, Laurie, Josh, David, Audrey, and Dogayu. Once again, I'd like to thank Ali, Anson, Stephanie, and Lisa from Cell Microsystems for letting us present this data. I believe we are saving questions until the very end of both sections, so thank you for listening.
Thank you, Andy, for that comprehensive and insightful presentation. And I would like to remind everyone to please continue to send in your questions as we move on to the second part of our webinar. There will be a Q&A at the end. Now, I'd like to take a moment to introduce one of our resident electrophysiologists, Dr. Stephanie Peruano. Dr. Peruano is a field applications scientist for cell microsystems. She completed her doctorate at North Carolina State University, where she studied sex and estrous cycle dependent differences in the electrophysiology of medium spiny neurons in the striatum. Following her doctorate, Dr. Peruano was a postdoctoral fellow at the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, where she investigated the role of sex and estrous cycle dependent differences in the expression of hippocampal region CA2 specific genetic markers and their impact on the electrophysiology of pyramidal neurons in the brain region. Dr. Peruano is now developing commercial operations and scientific applications for the Cell Microsystems portfolio of products, including the Ion Flux automated patch clamp system. Her insights today are sure to be invaluable for anyone interested in accelerating their patch clamp experiments. And with that, I'm excited to hand over the stage to Dr. Peruano.
Thank you, Anson, for that introduction. I just want to make sure that my screen is sharing, hopefully. There we go. Okay, well, thank you for the introduction, and thank you all so much for being here today.
I can't see your slides, Stephanie.
You cannot? Okay.
No.
Let me... Can you see them now?
Looks great.
Okay, perfect. Let me get the laser pointer. So as Anson was mentioning, I'm Stephanie Peruano, and I am the electrophysiologist at Cell Microsystems, kind of working with the applications both in the field and in-house of the Ion Flux Mercury platform, which holds the promise to make whole cell patch clamp electrophysiology experiments easier, faster, and high throughput, as we already saw from the data that Dr. Cook presented. But before I begin, I would like to take a few moments and I'd like to ask a question to all of you regarding the types of patch clamp experiments that you're currently doing. Okay, so how do we make whole cell patch clamp electrophysiology a lot more accessible? So the traditional way to study ion channels is to use a manual electrophysiology rig. And at a basic level, a manual rig needs several components such as a Faraday cage, an air table to prevent vibrations, a microscope equipped with the right optics, often IRDIC, a micromanipulator or several micromanipulators, cameras, digitizers, amplifiers, and a software package that allows us to acquire data and analyze the data. And depending on how fancy this setup is, these components can add up and represent hundreds of thousands of dollars. And yet, manual electrophysiology, wholesale patch clamp electrophysiology, is still extremely labor intensive, with a steep learning curve that often makes these types of experiments prohibitive to non-electrophysiologists. It is low throughput, even for seasoned electrophysiologists, because these experiments are quite literally done one cell at a time. And because of that, it is extremely time consuming. These experiments can take months to years to complete. So to address these pain points and limitations, at Cell Microsystems, we have an innovative solution in the IonFlux Mercury automated patch clamp platform. The IonFlux Mercury includes the most important components of a manual electrophysiology rig, such as amplifiers and digitizers, that get combined with the power of pneumatics and microfluidics to provide a fully automated system that enables the acquisition of high-quality electrophysiology data in a matter of minutes at the lowest cost per data point of any automated patch clamp system that's currently out in the market, providing the ability to patch more cells in less time and for less money. And this is because the IonFlux Mercury platform has electrodes that are in constant fluidic contact with the cells. The cells are loaded and transported into trap wells, where they become attached to microfluidics channels through vacuum pressure. Here, the cells are broken into with slight negative pressure, giving us full electrical access into the cells and achieving the whole cell patch clamp configuration with giga-ohm seal formation. Once the cells are patched, we can precisely control compound delivery and test up to 8 different compounds or 8 different concentrations of the same compound with proper washout steps in between. Currently, the IonFlux Mercury platform is the only automated patch clamp system in the market that offers the capability to add proper washout steps in between compound delivery, preventing ion channel desensitization and capturing the true kinetics of ion channels. So the IonFlux Mercury platform features state-of-the-art amplifiers for a higher signal-to-noise ratio, an electrically shielded recording chamber to prevent electric noise, continuous solution flow, temperature control, and the ability to do voltage clamp recordings on single cells and ensembles of cells. The platform includes 2 different models that are designed as benchtop systems that occupy the same space savings footprint in the lab. Our entry-level model, the IonFlux Mercury 16, has 16 amplifiers, uses standard size 96 well plates, where up to 64 compounds can be tested, and 8 independent experiments can be run at a time or per plate. Our premium model, the IonFlux Mercury HT, has 64 amplifiers. It uses standard size 384 well plates, where up to 256 compounds can be tested, and 32 independent experiments can be run per plate, giving users the flexibility to choose the right throughput for their experimental needs. And this is all due to the fact that the microfluidic structure at the bottom of the plate are designed so that each well has a unique role. So the cells are loaded into the inlet wells. Through pressure, they get pushed into the trap wells where they get patched. Once cells are patched, we can test up to 8 different compounds with proper washout steps to test the response of ion channels to these compounds. So here we have the underside of the IonFlux 16 well plate with 96 wells, and the underside of the IonFlux HT well plates with 384 well plates. And each one of these patterns represents an experimental pattern. Additionally, users have the flexibility to either record from single cells or from ensembles of cells. So the single cell plate allows users to record from a single cell per amplifier, and the 20-cell ensemble plate gives users the flexibility to patch from up to 20 cells per amplifier in each experimental pattern. So a classic IonFlux workflow starts with basic cell culture technique to prepare a homogeneous cell suspension. The recording protocols are designed in the user-friendly IonFlux app, and both of these, the cell suspension gets loaded into the plate and with all the compounds, and the recording protocols are also loaded into the IonFlux instrument. Once the protocols and the plate are inside the instrument, all the user needs to do is click play or record, and they can literally walk away, highlighting the true automated nature of the IonFlux. And it is really that simple. Once data is acquired, the data is loaded into the Analyzer app, where users can look at individual or collections of currents to assess recording sensitivity. They can also look at how the compounds affected the ion channels. Users can create overlay graphs, and finally, you can also export data to software packages such as Prism and ClampFit for more in-depth analysis. So in just a matter of minutes, users can patch from up to 648 cells in one plate and get to data analysis a lot faster. And as far as key applications go, the IonFlux Mercury platform can be incorporated into every step of the drug discovery and development process, as we saw from the earlier talk. And this can include anywhere from target identification and validation all the way to safety toxicology screenings in the central nervous system by looking at GABA receptors, and in the heart by looking at herd currents, for example. And in fact, since the SIPA initiative was launched, patch clamp measurements of ion channels are required for the approval of pharmaceuticals by the FDA. And in addition, ion channel malfunction has been implicated in several neurological disorders, heart disease, and even in the manifestation of genetic disorders such as cystic fibrosis, making ion channels ideal targets for drug discovery. A key application in which the IonFlux sets the standard for testing is in the investigation of ligand-gated ion channels. And this is because the microfluidics plate technology enables continuous perfusion of compounds and wash solutions, precise control over compound addition, rapid compound wash-in and wash-out steps, and complete compound washout, preventing receptor desensitization since compounds are not allowed to remain at their binding sites for longer periods other than what was intended for testing. And for example, internally and in many labs across the world, GABA receptors have been and continue to be tested with the IonFlux to determine drug safety in the nervous system. Here, we tested the activation of different kinds of GABAA receptor conformations with GABA, generating EC50s for each of this. Similarly, the IonFlux is being used to test the effects of positive allosteric modulators such as diazepam on GABA receptors, for example. And in addition to ligand-gated ion channels, the IonFlux can also be used to test voltage-gated ion channels. And this is due to the fact that our microfluidics technology enables superior concentration clamp of compounds, and our amplifiers facilitate gigaohm seal formation, enhancing recording signal and stability, as we can see here in these herd channel recordings using a standard two-step rectification and deactivation voltage protocol. So the IonFlux Mercury platform can enhance your ion channel electrophysiology research because it offers a scalable solution for automated whole cell patch clamp electrophysiology. The data is collected in a matter of minutes without compromising recording quality due to the electronic components and the microfluidics based plate technology that prevents receptor desensitization, all at the lowest cost per data point. And if you are working with difficult cell lines or are looking to improve the expression of ion channels in your cells, as part of our portfolio at Cell Microsystems, we have 3 instrument solutions that can aid in this process. The Cell Raft Air is an automated cell line development instrument that simulates flask-like culture conditions to create monoclonal cell lines or cell lines with an edit of interest, for instance, without the need to do limiting dilutions or any type of sorting. Thus, the cells can be created in the Cell Raft Air and then assessed for viability in the KC Cell Counter and Analyzer, which uses impedance-based technology to determine cell number and viability. And once number and viability are confirmed, we can assess ion channel function with the IonFlux. And as another offering in our portfolio, we also provide lab services to investigate cells at any point of their life cycle. We work with you to design the study, and our team of highly skilled professionals complete the assays to deliver high-quality data with a fast turnaround time. And here are just a few examples of our lab services capabilities. So now, before we conclude the seminar, I would like to ask you one more question. All right. I thank you all so much for your attention. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are always here to help. Have a great day.
Thank you, Dr. Pirano, for that informative presentation. And we will now move on to the Q&A session. All right, so got a lot of good questions here. So this first question is going to be directed at you, Andy, and it's a two-parter. So how fast is the solution exchange and what are flow rates of input and output? And the second part is going to be, what about the channel kinetics? So inactivation kinetics, desensitization, and recovery with such high solution exchange.
Yeah, so I think the best way to describe the flow rate without actually having exact numbers realistically, we're talking, so I can say that we're using 50 microliters of compound cells in the system. So the flow rates wouldn't really be amenable to saying how many mils a minute it is, for example. But the flow rates are really rapid. I think that was borne out by the nicotinic alpha 7 trace. So all of our applications are for 2 seconds, and you get excellent on kinetics and inactivation kinetics in that time. The nicotinic alpha 7, like I say, is the best one. So it's realistically tens of milliseconds, I would say, is for the initial change of solution. I think if you look at the presentation that Stephanie gave as well, it gives a better idea of how quickly the solutions change. The channel kinetics over time. So the kinetics that we see are typical of any manual patch recording we would see. So activation and inactivation. Sorry, I lost the question. I was looking at reading it. The inactivation and activation and inactivation are comparable to manual patch clamp. But we can apply, for most channels, we can wash off reapply compound EC80, for example, after probably a 30-second wash, and get full recovery from inactivation and good rate across time. So we actually, with all of our studies, we include a time match vehicle control for all of our assays to give an indication of how much desensitization there is across time from multiple additions. We include a positive reference and the negative control with everything that we send out. So hopefully that answered it. I can't see the rest of the question, unfortunately, anymore.
Great. And the next question, have you tested any compounds to enhance acetylcholine-induced currents of human muscle? I think that's nicotinic acetylcholine receptor.
Yeah, so there are no commercially available compounds for that. What I can say to answer that is that we do offer a PAM assay, which has the ability to detect PAM activity. So that's not the ideal answer, but we can detect them. But there is no commercially available compounds for nicotinic alpha 1 beta 1 delta epsilon PAM activity at this time I'm aware of. If anyone on the call is aware of any, I'd love to know.
All right, definitely keep the questions coming in. Do you use human receptors? Do you use alpha 6 beta 2 nicotinic choline receptors, acetylcholine receptors?
Yeah, so I should have said that. All of our channels are human. Everything I showed you was expressed in HEC or CHO cell lines. And at this time, we do not offer alpha 6 beta 2 nicotinic cell line or assay.
All right. What kind of grounding is used in your system? And have you tried calculating the change in reversal potential when you change the salines?
Sorry, can you repeat that again? I didn't hear part of that.
So what kind of grounding is used in your system? And have you tried calculating the change in reversal potential, in junction potential when you change the salines?
Honestly, the grounding is all done internally, so that probably would be a better question for Stephanie on the call. And we have not tried calculating the change in reversal potential for the change of salines. So we typically will do everything in the same saline, so there wouldn't really be a reversal potential change during the assay, and it is cancelled at the start of the assay. So we can, in theory, it could be done, but that's not something that we actually would do on a routine basis. If anyone from Cell Microsystems wants to chip in on that, I'd appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that all of the electronic components inside the system are grounded so that there is no electric noise from these components. And we have also not, or recently to my knowledge, calculated the liquid junction potential with the exchange of recording solutions.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add into that? So this is Ali from Cell Microsystems. The electrodes are actually, the ground electrodes are dipped into the in wells where the cells are, and they're referenced for both straps. And because of the way that the plate is, the junction potential is automatically calculated by the software and canceled out at the beginning.
Excellent. It's nice to have electrophysiologists on hand. And I think we'll wrap up with one final question, which this will be directed at you, Stephanie. Do you have the ability to do you have the capability to do inside-out recordings?
We do not. The system does wholesale patch clamp.
All right, I think that will wrap everything up. So as we conclude today's webinar, I'd like to extend our heartfelt thanks to Mr. Andrew Cook and Dr. Stephanie Perano for sharing their expertise, and to all of you for your active participation. It's great Q&A. We would greatly appreciate it if you would respond to a brief 4-question survey after the webinar has ended. A recording of this session, along with additional resources, will be sent via email and will be accessible on our website as soon as possible. Please keep an eye out for our upcoming webinars on related topics. Thank you once again for joining us today, and we hope to see you at future events. Have a wonderful day.